Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be, from your background, are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Tuesday, 10:30 on the Eastern Seaboard. We're live streaming on Rumble. Rumble.com/AmRadPod is where you can always find us on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Time. Today, we're going to be talking about momentum. Things seem to be trending in the right direction. They're not perfect, but why let perfect be enemy of good? I mean, we have a recent acquittal of a hero, an actual bona fide American hero in New York City, Daniel Penny. We have the location of a assassin from New York City as well. We're still banning TikTok, Chinese spyware out the window. Awesome. And then also you have CNN and Jake Tapper getting sued, and that lawsuit is progressing in a good direction. Not everything is perfect. We're going to get to some of the black pilling, as we always like to do, but we want to make sure that when we have the opportunity to smile and say, oh, things are going well, let's take advantage, exhale, and soak in all of the tears from the communist left. So we're going to get to all that today. It's standard fare. Got GOB by my side. At GOB Actual is where you find him on social media. Garrett, hope you had a great weekend. I'm ready to get after it on a Tuesday morning, sir. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Every day is Mondays, Steve, as you well know. Maybe trending towards Tuesdays. We'll see.
That's sort of where you measure yourself in the progress of an indefinitely suspended forever FBI whistleblower. What day of the week it is? You're in the Tuesday of life, I guess, as it is. But we had yesterday, and we talked briefly last week about the status of the Daniel Penny trial. And ultimately, I thought it was trending in the wrong direction, particularly when the district attorney and the judge, I thought, colluded to drop the top line charge, which was the manslaughter charge. And I thought the best possible outcome for Daniel Penny was going to be a hung jury, because if they didn't render the verdict on that top line charge, then they couldn't go to the lesser charge and then say, well, we let him out of jail on the big one, but we're still going to get our pound of flesh on the lesser one, particularly when you see the pictures, the cartoon images of that jury, and there's the one guy who's double masked. You figure there's no way he's ever going to acquit. Right. But be it as it may, the jury rendered a verdict, complete acquittal. And now, for heaven's sake, Daniel Penny, get out of New York City. Your thoughts, Garrett?
You got to go. You got to go, buddy. First of all, I have to come with an apology, Steve, because I was with you. I thought there's no chance. It's New York City. You got the masked freaks on the jury. But as we know, and it's just I'm just theorizing here, but these masked types, they're not the strongest of us. So it took a little bit, but eventually they rolled over and caved and came back with the proper verdict. But as this deliberation was going on, I found myself thinking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case as well, which, with my ties here to Wisconsin, that I followed that one pretty close. I think I've talked about it before. We even watched that trial when I was an FBI agent. We had it on every day, and we took a friendly bet at the end. You know, there was no wager, so we weren't breaking any policy or anything like that. But my squad, we all, you know, said, you know, how long is it going to take for them to come back, and what's the verdict going to be? And I was like, 15 minutes guilty. And I was wrong then too, just like I was wrong with this one. But looking at it again from a law enforcement perspective, and we talked about this regarding this most recent case too. When you look at use of force, when you look at defensive tactics, when you look at is somebody going to cause death or physical injury to someone else, then you can intervene. And that is, in most places, that is the standard, not just for law enforcement, but for you defending yourself or others as well. And that was the case here. This case should have never been brought. A reasonable law enforcement officer never would have made an arrest in this case. A reasonable district attorney's office never would have brought charges in this case. But we know that New York City is not reasonable. Thankfully, there was a reasonable jury here, or at least reasonable enough to come back with a proper verdict, because I thought this guy's life, it's over, it's ruined. In a large way, it still is, because he's been through this ordeal. Where do you begin to pick up the pieces now? Who's going to hire him? But with you, I'm with you. He's got to get out of New York. Step one.
You know, I've looked at the case. I sort of tried to put myself in the position of being, I don't know, a juror or somebody who could be neutral, because you and I are pretty hard on, and we are outcome, not outcome guys, right? We're process guys. I think that I can probably put my personal opinions aside. I think it would be a pretty fair jury, even though I bring a law enforcement background. And what struck me was, first, the doctor made the case, completely flipped what she was saying. At first, she said it was an inconclusive, and then she watched the video. She was just supposed to look at the body, but then she watched the video and changed her mind and said that it might have been he might have held that chokehold too long. The other thing that really was disturbing to me was how immediately the messaging went around, and you would see nonstop. Anytime there was a conversation about it on media, there would be like, well, this brings up some heavier issues about policing. Like, well, policing, you mean manipulating a guy who you have because you want the outcome? Or you're trying to tie somehow Jordan Neely to George Floyd? And then racial issues. Race is not involved in there. And I think if anyone is bringing that up, would be people that are gearing up for the BLM 2025, which, as much as we have momentum, it's a coming, folks. But to me, the ultimate was, and I wrote it down here. I want to make sure that I read it exactly. This was in the closing arguments for Daniel Penny's defense attorney. He said, this guy's name is Stephen Reiser. He asked the jurors, who do you want on the next train ride with you? Do you want Daniel Penny, or do you want a Jordan Neely? And I thought that that was probably one of the more compelling cases we make. That's where you're really outside the facts. You're making that closing argument. But it was almost like an Atticus Finch moment where he brings up everything, or is it what's the other one, Garrett, where the Time to Kill, where they make the case, and then it says, imagine that everything that happened, imagine that he was white, right? It was able to sort of drill down into that emotional argument of it, and flip the racial argument on its head. I thought that was a really compelling case, and ultimately was on the facts. Like, I want to ride a train. I want my wife on a train car where Daniel Penny is. Because
I
it
want
really
Boo Radley.
that.
I want Boo Radley on my train.
Good poll. Uh,
I'm like digging back. Okay, 8th or 9th grade, whatever year we read that. What was that guy's name? Bo? No, it was Boo. Boo Radley. Bring him.
Brew Rally, that is definitely an all-timer. So outside of Daniel Penny, they also have an arrest that came from the assassin of the United Healthcare CEO. And this has sort of gripped people. I mean, it's kind of gross when you think about it. Like, everybody's like super involved in
Yeah.
and
Wild.
interested in this. And
Wild
that's
case.
because it's a novel case, right?
Yeah.
And if it bleeds, it leads. And how often is it that you have clear video of a assassination happening, and there were elements of it that were fantastical, where he'd written messages on the shell casings, and it just was a compelling story. It's a lot like the Malaysian airliner, I guess, just disappearing. But it looks like they have a suspect in custody. And
Luigi, right? Isn't
his name is Luigi, so you know
Luigi?
he's an
It's me,
assassin, right?
Mario.
I was gonna go with the Sicilian mafia angle, but you can take it to Mario.
I've got little kids. What can I say?
But pull this up. It's from New York Post and just some basic facts about this guy, Luigi Mangione. He's an anti-capitalist Ivy League graduate
Well,
who liked online quotes by Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
hmm.
He's a prep school valedictorian, and he was caught though with the ghost gun and the silencer and the passport and 4 fake
Sure.
IDs, which has led some to the
Yeah.
conclusion that this is a frame job.
I wouldn't say that I'm concluded on this, but it did make me think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, which, if you're not familiar with that case, the FBI just stumbled right into all the evidence they needed. They had a guy who escaped the prison, and he was staying in a hotel right across the street, and the rifle and the newspaper that said that MLK is going to be at this place just found right there on the
An
sidewalk.
orgy of evidence.
What are the chances? Sure, yeah. Color me skeptical, Steve, but yeah, with this one as well, I'm not conclusive in my conspiracy theory here, but I certainly have some outstanding questions.
I have some speculation. Let's just throw out our law enforcement hat and let's put our people with a triple digit IQ, i.e., smarter than Kamala Harris, hats on, and let's just speculate. Now, I'm trying to imbibe it as much as everyone else, and this guy seems to be very smart. He seems to be privileged, we'll say. I mean, I think he has a graduate degree also from the Ivy League. There's pictures of him being a world traveler. I think he probably comes from wealth to some extent, high intelligence. Maybe he is an ideologue and he becomes a vile, vicious Marxist communist and he just decides to go and kill this CEO. He is smart enough to carry out a plot. And then the weirdness happens where he's got like monopoly money in the backpack, and yet he's not has the mask on his face, so he's not a criminal mastermind. He's just a high intelligence guy. And then when he gets apprehended, side note, this is a really good year for McDonald's in Pennsylvania. I mean, first you have the Donald Trump photo op, and now you got the arrest of this would-be assassin or
Louis,
actual assassin, Luigi. Um, and then he's quiet throughout the entire process, right? Not talking to cops, not saying that indicates one thing or another. It just could indicate that you're smart and you don't talk to the police no matter what, even if you've been framed, right? Even if it's a put-up job.
did
And
you
then I
see
saw
the YouTube video release? Did you see that?
no.
It was a 60-second timer allegedly from his YouTube channel, and it just had little messages inserted into it like, if you're seeing this, I've been arrested. And then I forget which
He
tick
had a
mark of.
dead man switch on a
Yeah, it's like,
YouTube.
wait a second, what's going on here? I don't know, man. I need Ian Carroll to do one of his deep dives on this because
I
I
think
don't.
ultimately we'll get some answers to this. I don't think it's going to be the crime of the century where there's a conspiracy around it. But nowadays you're going to have lots of conspiracy. But the thing, what I'm putting on my speculation at about is he's a young guy. He's in his 20s. I think that's the prime age for paranoid schizophrenia to sort of manifest itself. And if he's just a high intelligence guy who then takes that turn, that to me sort of checks, particularly when he's quiet the entire time, except about screaming about his Faraday bag. That seems like a lot of the walk-ins that we got from the FBI,
Yes.
people who thought I'm being spied on at all
Uh-huh.
times. Again,
Where can I put
I'm
my
not
phone?
saying a Faraday bag is a bad thing, but he took personal umbrage with that enough to have the spontaneous outburst about it. And then also you planted that money on me.
The
It
Monopoly money?
no, the
Oh,
the cash they found him with.
oh.
So his undisciplined nature with that regard, and then his ham-handedness in order to get apprehended with all the stuff, and also the ability to carry out and execute the plan to begin with. It's sort of a grab bag of a guy. It indicates to me not a professional contract killer.
Right. He would have had the proper ammo for that suppressed handgun instead of having to do malfunction corrections along the way. And I think I read that the guy got hit in the chest and the foot, and it's, well, a professional
Marksmanship.
probably not hitting you in the foot, even if he is correcting a malfunction.
Well, this is probably why Andy McCabe thought he was a sophisticated
Oh
hitman, because
gosh.
hitting somebody in the foot and then the chest indicates good grouping on the hands of senior
I just
executives.
I absolutely love, yeah, that's right. I just love the appeal to authority there, though. What the F does Andy McCabe know about assassinations? Dude worked cases for 6 years and then got into management and immediately started subverting the government, and did so until he was released from duty and then sued and got his back pay and then got hired by CNN. What does he know? But they're going to bring him on and cart him out there like he's a professional. He's not, people. He's not. I'm sorry. And by the way, you can tell by the Rachel Maddow and Mark Cuban glasses that he wears that he certainly knows next to nothing about actual law enforcement or being a hitman. Good grief.
They all seem to want to look like lesbians, don't they? Jake Tapper, Andy McCabe.
Yes,
get-
it must be. What would that be? A pansexual? Is that what that is? When they kind of fit right? It's like I don't know if that's a woman or a man. Is
That
that
was
pan? I
what
don't know.
the Health and Human Services were celebrating the other day on social media, was National or International Pansexual Day. But look,
Oh,
let's
we
get
got a
stay
day
on
for that now,
good
huh?
things, man. Momentum, right? Look, we have Daniel Penny acquitted. We potentially have an assassin in custody. That's a good thing, right? That's right. How about the death potentially of ESG? I think that that's probably a good thing. And I don't know what you know about ESG, environmental, societal governance.
I
It's
know that it's bad, and isn't this one of those Klaus Schwab things as well? World Economic Forum.
It's a way to basically bring about Marxism through the private sector. So the government can say, it's not us, it's
Yeah.
not us, right?
Yay.
I mean, I can give you a baseline example. There's no longer shareholders, there's stakeholders. So the CEO isn't answerable to the people who actually own stock for the company. He's answerable to the stakeholders, which are all of us. And they're scored on things, and because they're not answerable to the shareholders anymore, they don't have to be profitable. They just have to do things that gives them a good score. And good scores would be like, let's say you're a bank. You don't have to turn a profit. You just have to not loan money to a gun company, because that would make your company, your score come down. Don't loan money to an oil driller,
Mhm.
right? That's how it's basically
Don't
done.
sell cigarettes in your gas station.
um, but there's an incoming SEC pick, the stock market guys, that is interesting to me because he wants to ditch this climate disclosure rule on top of the ESG. So just a little bit of background on this guy, because it's kind of in the weeds. You got to stick with me on this one. It is important. It's going to impact your life. All right. His name's Paul Atkins. He's a critic of regulations to require companies to disclose their risks to climate change.
Can I derail you for a second here? Oh no, now I lost it. Where'd it go? In the chat, somebody said, oh, where'd it go? Dang it. There it is. Maybe the CEO used the catchphrase, "Don't shoot yourselves in the foot." I thought that was pretty funny. There,
So
that's enough for me.
Paul Atkins is against this regulation that's been passed through that basically says Coca-Cola has to disclose what their impact is on the environment, right? Because reasons, right? It ensures that we have regulators that have jobs, ensures that we have regulators that have power that can come into Coca-Cola bottling plants and say, you know what, I don't like what you got going on here. There's just way too much carbon dioxide in the bubbles of the Coke.
How would
So
they
we're going to
actually figure out what their impact is? What's the
Well,
metric
they
there?
would have to most likely hire people who were maybe in prior positions in government who knew the regulations really well, right? It sort of ensures the retirement gig for these people
Oh, so it'd
outside.
be like, oh, I don't know, Jennifer Moore getting hired by GE Aerospace after retiring 2 days after she was deposed by congressional staff attorneys, something like that?
Exactly. So, environmental groups and advocates for sustainable investing criticized this guy's selection to head up the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and he urged the Senate to reject him, saying he would gut efforts to promote investing based on ESG.
Hire that man.
Exactly, because we got the momentum now, man. Let's end this thing. I mean, this is one of those nerdy things that people just kind of their eyes roll in the back of their head. It's like I sat in a macroeconomics class once in college and I could not stay awake for more than 6 minutes at a time. I get it, but it does impact you because if you have a 401k, if you have a pension program, they are heavily invested in these large corporations, publicly traded companies. And the publicly traded companies are being driven by the government and then by people who are installed into positions of chief executive officer to do things that are not profitable. That's not going to bode well for your retirement ability. So you're having the incoming SEC commissioner saying, look, we're not going to require Coca-Cola or Home Depot to say what is our risk to the environment. I think is an objectively good thing. If we're not going to have these companies say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we have to debank you because you are a risk to us because you happen to be a producer of firearms," then that's a good thing because it's good for freedom.
I want to know, how do you get this to stay? I'm typically not a fan of more legislation, and I guess you could even make an argument for, well, that wouldn't be the government's place to make a law that says you can't instill something like ESG. But I want that, at least right now where I'm sitting present day, I do. Would that lead to a different type of tyrannical government in 20 years? Maybe. I don't know. But it is the ESG score, and inserting Marxism in this way certainly is not a good thing. Only the craziest of the crazies would want this. Also, if I'm buying Coca-Cola, do I even give a rat's tail about what their carbon footprint is? I don't. So why would the government essentially have to force companies into this? I don't want that. I don't think any freedom loving person in the world would want something like that. It would be the same, and I think some of this type of thing already exists, but with greenhouse gases. Oh, Mr. Farmer, we're going to have to tax you more because your cow flatulates too much. I don't want that either. Yellow labeled meat is already expensive enough. I just want the government out of the way. Get out of the way. I don't want you here. I don't want you inserting yourself. I want you to take care of war. If some other hostile nation is going to attack us, I want you to take care of that. And minimally, I want you to take care of the highways. That's about it. That's really about all I want you for. But hey, I'm an extremist and American radical.
That's right. An anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremist. I think you have to
Agave.
defang it to such a point that it's too big of a task. And as much as we have momentum, I think the expectations going in are super high. They're never going to live up to your expectations because the wheels of the government are turning very slowly.
Mhm.
It is a behemoth. There are entrenched forces that you and I were talking and with our suspendables group, and I think it was you who were sharing the comments from the recent FBI town hall, their
Yeah.
concerns. And it was something to the effect of, if we're not going to be doing the clearance checks on the incoming director, then maybe he shouldn't be allowed in our space.
Mhm.
That's people who believe in the institution
Right.
above all,
Right.
right?
It's somebody too who doesn't understand the different branches of government, and that your FBI, that they think there's some knight guarding the gate of, that falls to the executive, dear FBI Marxist fellow, or what's the female version of fellow? I don't know. But
Comradist.
but that's one of the pieces we talk about so often. There might be a tinge of ignorance there, but there certainly is a tinge of hubris, because they do think that when you're posing that type of question, you're running it through your brain, and you're thinking, should I ask this question? How do I want to formulate it? And then you actually send the question in as if you are this bastion of FBI fidelity. And I'm over here saying, you actually don't have fidelity, bravery, or integrity. You're a weakling who should never have been in government in the first place, if that is how you think. Oh, millions and millions of people voted to elect Donald Trump for a second time because of how bad things have gotten, and I'm going to be the arbiter of not letting him through the door. Uh One of these things is not like the other, and you should not be in government if that's the case. Yet here we sit, Steve, and all the other suspendables, indefinitely, forever, without pay, seemingly, because we tried to say, hey, these are the type of things that are going wrong in the agency. By the way, not political. These are just problematic from a law enforcement perspective, from a constitutional perspective, from even an executive branch perspective. But then you have these droves of people who, well, we can't let them in because we aren't doing the background check. No, 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 no. The American people voted for a mandate, and they're going to get it, hopefully, to some degree. But I'm with you, the behemoth to get those wheels churning. That's my concern already. You got 4 years. I think realistically, probably like, well, maybe 2, depending on how the 26 elections go. But they plan to hit the ground running, and not just in the FBI, across the board. What does that look like? Are you going to run into a wall right away because the bureaucracy is so thick in all these agencies? Doge, I think, needs to be the spearhead and needs to clean it out. But even that, how do you do that? How do you do that with all the laws we have on the books? How do you do that without drumming up a couple hundred different types of lawsuits? I don't have the answers to all that. I'm hopeful still because we do have this momentum. We do have this mandate, but I am cautiously optimistic at the same time as being hopeful.
I think there's the Kobayashi Maru, the Captain Kirk response to that. I'm not playing the game. I'm not going to operate within the parameters that you've established for me. Well, the regulation says this. Well, guess what? I don't care.
Yeah.
You have to take the approach that the communists have taken the entire time, where our side has gone to them and said, well, the Constitution says, and they say, we don't care what the Constitution says. We're just going to
Yeah.
do it. It's back to mutually assured destruction. That's the response that has to exist. You have to roll in and have the confidence of your convictions. You have to roll in and say, guess what? You're gone. Well, you can't do that to me. Well, so sue me. Oh,
Right.
or wait, why don't you try to arrest me? Oh, wait, I'm the force that does the arresting, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be aggressive to that certain extent. And just thinking about the questions being posed in an FBI town hall about how can we preserve and uphold our institution here against these radical status quo shatterers. I'm reminded that, and this was one of these books about the Secret Service, and it was a story that there was the secretary who was typing something, and she was very much a fief in her own fiefdom. Like, whatever I'm typing on, you have to have a need to know that. And apparently, Ronald Reagan was just kind of like doing the rounds in the office, just kind of as a surprise visit back in the day when executives would be touchable and actually accessible by their subordinates. And he just rolls up on her typing away at a typewriter, and he just pulls the paper out and sort of in jest. And she default comes up, you don't have the authority to look at that.
I'm
And he just looks at
surprised.
her like a cocker spaniel and cocks his head. And he was like, I think it's okay. But that's the sort of approach you have to have. I'm
Yeah.
just going to do it, grip it and rip it.
Yep, you have to, and that's a great example because that type of person exists everywhere in government. Well, not just in government; they exist everywhere. I think most people have encountered somebody like that, and I really don't know how you fix that. That's a heart issue and a character issue, and that's the last type of person that should be in government. Period. Especially in the alleged land of the free. Sorry, sweetheart, you don't get to work here because of that character issue that you have. You got to pack your stuff. You're on the next train with Boo Radley, and you're gone.
All right, let's keep momentum going. Let's not lose momentum on our show about momentum. But first, let's
That'd be a faux pas.
pause. Let's pause the momentum because we got to thank today's sponsor, which is MClip, M-Clip, where you go. Because we're in December, coming up on Christmas. You need a gift idea? You can't do any better than MClip. You guys go to m-clip.com. This is American company in the state of Georgia. It's family owned, been around for over 20 years. It's all guaranteed. Fancy luxury goods, money clips. They will not break the bank. You'll still have some money to put in the money clip. They look really sleek, metallic. You can make them look leather. You can monogram your initials. They have an association with Major League Baseball or in the off season, but you never know if there's a fan in your life. Or if you're a fan of ours at the Suspendables, they have a Suspendables line, and you can get the badge or our logo or our emblem all put on the money clips, m-clip.com. And if you use the promo code suspendable, you get 10% off store wide. So take advantage of it, m-clip.com, and get your Christmas shopping done early. We're coming up on it, guys. It's 2 weeks, just so you know. Friendly reminder.
At the risk of losing momentum, Steve, as if I don't have better things to do, I added some new items to the merch store. Oh, that's not the right page. Where is it? You know what? I don't know what I'm doing. How about that?
We'll pull it up at the end.
Here we go. I got it.
All right.
People have been asking for hoodies, and so I put some new hoodies up there. And yeah, so head over to the-suspendables.com too. We got some last line hoodies, some new versions of the last line shirt, and a new version of the suspendable hoodie. If you're watching, you're seeing me scroll over these things, but the-suspendables.com. If you want, I think 10% off. Use promo code Kyle because I'm so pathetic at running the store that I don't even have an AMRAD code. But there you go.
It all goes to the same place, and that's to support GOB and his family. All right, let's keep the momentum, and we're going to go to one of the guys that I know, a big fan of, and that's Jonathan Turley, because he was reporting about CNN, the demise and fall of CNN, and Jake Tapper. There's a lawsuit that's actually in place right now, and I thought it was interesting because it was a little bit connected. I mean, it's Afghanistan, but just with what's going on in Syria and the fact that we have all these refugees from Syria, it made me think of that. And I happened to come across this. So this comes from Jonathan Turley's site. Jake Tapper, CNN, lose a major motion in a defamation case by a Navy veteran.
Oh, this sounds interesting.
So this is old. This is from the pullout of Afghanistan when this initially happened. So it stems from a report on November 11th, Veterans Day, 2021. The pullout was in August. That was when we had the last planes taking off and we had Abbey Gate happen, right? So the report came from CNN on Jake Tapper's show, The Lead with Jake Tapper. In the segment, Tapper tells the audience ominously how CNN correspondent Alex Marquardt, we'll just call him Alex, discovered Afghans trying to get out of the country, facing a black market full of promises, demands, exorbitant fees, and no guarantee of safety or success. The correspondent claimed that desperate Afghans are being exploited with exorbitant and impossible amounts to flee the country. And then he named this Navy veterans company. Zachary Young is the guy's name. And he said that they were an example of basically exploiting Afghans who were trying to leave the country.
You know who was the example of exploiting Afghans, Steve? The U.S. government, and only the U.S. government.
Yes. So the Zachary Young, he's a Navy veteran, and he just has his entire reputation besmirched, right? Hurts his company. Then there's the added element now where it's harder to win a defamation lawsuit if you're a public persona, right? But it's a double-edged sword, right? If the media talks about you, then don't you become a person of public acclaim? So then the standard is immediately raised. So there's been some argument about that. He's won that in the past, and that Jonathan Turley talked about that in an older piece. But what do they call him behind closed doors? That was an element of the discovery that went on with this lawsuit, because was it just a one-off and they confused and they issued a retraction and we're sorry, Zach? No, actually behind the scenes, there were conversations where they said they were going to like nail this MFer, right?
Course.
And they were going after him personally. And they reached out to Zachary for his comment, and they gave him 2 hours, and then they went live with it, right? They did not give him an adequate amount of time.
Dude.
And then in court, they said that Sharia law prohibited the women from being evacuated to some extent. So they tried to cite Sharia law as a reason to throw this all out. So it gets ridiculous. I just like seeing CNN struggle. I'm going to pour gasoline on the embers when it gets burned down entirely. But the last piece, this particular story from Jonathan Turley about, says in a pair of orders, the jury will be allowed to award punitive damages. He's going to get that Nick Sandman money.
Heck
And
yeah.
his experts are going to be allowed to be heard by the jury on how much he's been damaged. And it found that the Navy veteran was not a public figure and is thus not subject to a higher standard of proof. So they can just treat him like you and me, John Q, and he's going to get paid, right?
Good. He
Nick
should.
Sandman had that problem.
Yep.
They said, well, he's a public figure. Well,
No,
you
he's
made
not.
him a public
Yes,
figure.
right. Is that going to work for us? We were kind of pigeonholed into this new existence. It's never been about money, but I hope that guy gets paid big time. You know what's weird about this? As you're going through that, I was thinking to my younger days. I got this book behind me. If you're watching, you can see my part of my bookshelf called The Outpost, written by Jake Tapper. It's fantastic. It's a great story about what happened in Afghanistan at a particular outpost, hence the title. But when this first came, I guess I used to be a little more moderate, or maybe he was, or maybe we all were. I think of that meme where it says who radicalized you, and then it's got like the Chad and the whoever moving closer and closer, and then they're like right up to each other and says you did. And I'm thinking about that because I used to listen to CNN or clips of it here and there or whatever, and I would take it in and I would try to digest it and think like, well, this is where I think your thinking's wrong. And now, Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, Jake Tapper at CNN, you name them, I I don't even want to hear them. I don't even want to, and I'm sure they'd say the same thing about me. And I, again, I don't know how you fix that. I still do my best to try to get a little bit from the other side and try to take it in, but it seems like they've gone so crazy. Granted, they would say I would. Well, you have your fake sky magical god or whatever, and I don't know. It just is a weird time to be alive because on one hand, I've got this book, and it's year. I want to say it's at least a decade old by now.
It's an excellent book. Yeah.
It's fantastic, and then today you look at Jake Tapper and I think, he's like Adam Schiff type. He's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen, and still can't do my Trump. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting times, but hopefully that Navy vet gets paid out as he should, and hopefully CNN falters as they should even more.
I think the outpost was called Keating, right? Is an outpost
That
Keating.
sounds
There's
right.
actually a
Yep.
Netflix movie about it, which has Clint Eastwood's son as the main character. He does a pretty good job in it. So
Interesting.
check it
I'll
out.
have to check that out.
And Jake Tapper, I guess, was Walter Cronkite imitating until Donald Trump, and that's when the Trump
Oh,
derangement syndrome
yeah.
hit him pretty
Yep.
hard. But I'm all about it, and I think that CNN is going to rightfully collapse. They're not going to reap the whirlwinds like they did in 2016, and I think it's really tied to the way that they behaved around coronavirus. But the momentum is continuing in haste. And let's go to campus reform. I've actually got, I think, 2 stories from them today, but this one's a good one because it's another court ruling that went in our favor here. Catholic University settles a $2 million lawsuit over
$2 million.
COVID-19 tuition refund. So the students filed a lawsuit, as they should have, because they shut down in the spring and they basically said, oh, it'll be temporary. And then they just wound up having them pay full tuition and not have access to any of the accoutrements of in-person learning. They estimated that approximately 46% of in-person instruction, activities, and on-campus services for which they had already paid were disrupted and canceled. So a lawsuit came through. And of course, the Catholic University of America said, well, we're just going to settle because we don't want to have a deal with costly litigation in any way, shape, or form here.
Sure.
But they know they're wrong. And isn't that supposed to be a Christian value that you admit when you make a mistake and make it right?
That's what I'm thinking here is, why did it even take this? You didn't render the services that you agreed to, whether we had a quote unquote pandemic or not. So just do the right thing and refund the people the 40% of their salary or of their tuition that they paid, and they didn't get the services rendered that they thought were part of the agreement when they paid. That this is another thing we've lost as a society, is just simple, reasonable behavior towards one another. This goes back to the golden rule: treat others as you'd want to be treated. And I hate to say it, but it's extra despicable coming from a Christian institution, a Catholic institution. Y'all know better. More than anybody, you know better. And so you're gonna force these students to enter into probably some type of small class action suit to try to get their tuition back. And as anybody who's been in any part of the legal system knows, it's a pain. And so they're not getting money on top of it for the time spent dealing with it, or the stress caused, or, oh man, I got to pay my lawyer. And they probably would get lawyer fees in a case like this as part of the settlement. But you're paying your attorney whatever their rate is as you go forward. And that's all very stressful. And then when finally the jig is up, we're wrong, well, we'll just quietly settle, because and then on top of it, we'll give the lame duck excuse of, we don't want to pay for costly litigation. Well, you already were paying for that litigation to get to this point, but you were wrong. You were going to lose. So even then, you still can't bring yourself to tell the truth. Why do all these places just remind me of the FBI at this point? Just tell the truth.
I think one of the few silver linings that we had out of coronavirus was there was always the statement you said, well, you're going to college not to actually get an education, because we don't do that anymore. You're just going there and you're paying for a diploma, right? And the universities essentially said, yeah, you're right. We're not going to actually do any instruction. In fact, stay in your dorm rooms and don't do anything at all. Pay us the full freight. I mean, you're paying for that piece of paper. We're going to make sure that we deliver on that piece of paper, or the sheepskin or lambskin, whatever they call it nowadays. That the weirdo lefties at my university asked me to say, no, I don't want that. I just want to print it on paper. Again, communists never think things through. We don't kill farm animals just for diplomas. That's a sunk
Yes.
cost.
I got a leg of lamb in the freezer right now. You could have used the hide for your diploma, Steve.
I think that's what we do, which is also what we use the turkey legs for at the county fairs.
Turkey. Ugh.
The turkey legs at county fairs,
Turkey legs are
those
pretty.
come from the deli meat. Like, otherwise the legs
Oh.
would just be tossed in the trash.
Well, that would be wasteful. We don't want to waste.
Turkey's never a waste. I know I'm in the minority in that one. All right. I've got one more, and then I want to kind of black pill us a little bit, because momentum doesn't mean perfect. But
I
this
do
one,
love my black pills.
I want
Always.
to get the First Amendment advocate's opinion on, because the First Amendment isn't absolute. We've talked about before. There are issues. And I think the First Amendment is also limited to Americans, which is why I think that we'll probably reach the same conclusion here, but you never know. I want to debate if there is one. This comes from Catholic Vote, and it's about TikTok, Chinese spyware. Federal's appeals court upholds a TikTok ban. Now, the controversy centers around an act that President Biden signed earlier this year. It promised to ban TikTok unless it was sold to an American buyer, and cited national security concerns in regard to data protection. Also, just in the videos and things that are shared, like in America, it's put a Tide Pod in your mouth, and in China, it's go do some orchestra and symphony and quantum physics. But TikTok sued the U.S. government in May of this year and said that this act is unconstitutional because it limits Americans' free speech rights. The judge in this one, his name is Douglas Ginsburg, wrote, "The First Amendment exists to protect free speech in the United States. Here, the government acted solely to protect the freedom from a foreign adversary nation and to limit the adversary's ability to gather data on the people of the United States." Do you think that banning TikTok, unless it's owned and operated by an American institution, is a First Amendment violation?
I do. I do think that. And look, I got it. China is an adversary of ours, one of the primary ones. Concur, 100%. We need to do our utmost to thwart whatever they're trying to do to us. You know, we've talked of the cold civil war lately. Well, we've been in a cold type of war with China for a really long time. China has this whole 100-year plan, and look, for our FBI minders, all of this is open source. I'm not sharing anything secret. And but this is another thing I despise. The oft cited, well, national security. For national security purposes, Steve, we're gonna have to have the government interfere with your life and your Bill of Rights. I despise that. I really do. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with government is, well, just chalk it up to national security. And I thought that well before they even used that type of argument against people like us. Well, it's security. It's security related. Okay, nobody ever accused any of us of leaking anything classified. So what security issue do you have? But that's a story for a different day. So with this particular issue, yeah, I got to side with the TikTok attorneys here, even if the CCP is or wait, what is it? PRC, People's Republic of China. I'm getting my communists mixed up over here, Steve. But yeah, in America, you get to let China have spyware on your phone if you want. I think it's been in the public stratosphere long enough that TikTok is basically Chinese spyware. They're gathering data on you, but you get to make that choice. And most people would say, "Oh, I don't care. I like TikTok. I like it enough where." They're going to get the information somewhere or another, anyways. Or even better, well, my own government's collecting the same information on me, so what do I care? And I think that's fine for most people. If that's how you want to go, that's what you get to do in this country, and the government doesn't get to impede on that, whether the app comes from China or from Iceland. It shouldn't matter because the First Amendment is more paramount. Now, does that mean that China might get some information that they're going to exploit against Americans, maybe even against people in government who can't give up the TikTok. Yeah, maybe. And I'm willing to take that risk because I I'm closer to being a First Amendment absolutist than a government infringing on your life advocate.
All right, I got two questions for you on this one. I'd be interested on your opinion. There's the right reason and the real reason that
Mm,
things are done. I think that what they're saying, the right reason to do this is we're worried about security, national security, right? That's something that can get people to support. Say, hey, we don't want our geopolitical enemy to get this very sensitive information about us. But then there's the real reason. Could the real reason be that we don't want a social media company encouraging our citizens to do things like eat Tide Pods, and then at the same time encourage their citizens to do things like their math homework? And that's effectively an objectively bad thing for us. And we just want to find a way. Like the president, if he had actual cognitive abilities, sitting in the Oval Office saying, "I don't care what you got to use. Find a way so we can get rid of this thing because it's bad for the citizens." That sentiment, I don't hate. Where do you think that that stands, though? Do you think that just in a land of the free, you have to allow a geopolitical enemy to infiltrate and use technology to effectively take down our culture?
yeah, it's a good question. It's a fair question. It's one that does need to be considered. I think I do lean towards we're free, and that comes with some risk. And yes, our government should still be working diligently at thwarting that risk as much as possible. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is what I'm thinking, though. And yeah, I still lean towards let the people be free, even if they want to make dumb decisions. A bunch of people in the chat mentioned Pokemon Go. Great example of it happening here from our own institutions gathering data on us and really lying to us as to what it is. Just hey, here's a fun new game. Were you a cop still when Pokemon Go was around?
No, I just got
Oh,
moved
okay.
on.
All right. So I was a cop and dude, the entire summer was, suspicious person calls and, 99 times out of 100, maybe 98 out of 100, it was Pokemon Go. And it's like, oh, okay, at least you kids are outside, going under the bridge collecting whatever Charizard or whoever's over there. But yeah, I think I do. I think I lean towards let the people be free. And I'm willing to be wrong on that. Maybe if I mull it over a little bit more, I would arrive at a different conclusion. But
Let me give you one that maybe could prompt you and provoke you to mull it over more, because I've been sort of in the back scenes involved with something else, and that's this law that Texas passed that said that pornography websites that operate in their state have to require age verification. Now, the ACLU said that this is a violation of the First Amendment. It's limiting Americans' access
mm,
to that content, which is, as they say, free speech. Texas is saying, well, we have a duty and a responsibility to protect the youngest from seeing this sort of thing. And I don't think it's a really particularly hard hurdle to click, yes, I'm 18. I don't think there's a lot of vetting that goes on here, but it's more of a symbolic gesture.
right.
And I think that there's a parallel to, you have to give an ID to go and see a R-rated movie or a
Hmm.
higher rated movie. It's a mature audience movie, right? Is that a limit on your First Amendment?
See, there I lean towards no because of the what's the legal term, the prurient interest at hand here. Because I guess I'll give you another cop story. When I was an intern, dang, this is really peeling back the layers of the onion. This goes way back, but I was an intern in Greenfield, Wisconsin, and I would do like one ride along a week for the whole summer, and it was great exposure and experience. And I remember one time early on, I think it was at Kmart. Does anybody remember Kmart? I think they're no longer in existence, but we went to the local Kmart for a retail theft, and some other squad got there before us, and I found out a little bit later that that officer, because there were two officers there, they're riding double. Well, one of the guys was on field training. He's relatively new, and it turned out this mother was having her child conceal the items and steal them. And so in Wisconsin, we have we have a law that is titled contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So when I think of Pornhub or wherever making this argument, even ACLU arguing on these porn sites' behalf that it's a First Amendment issue, I lean towards no, because of the sexual nature, which, as we know from our First Amendment episodes, well, I guess listed in those episodes that we did, it was child porn that explicitly does not have a First Amendment protection. But I would say that runs parallel with the delinquency of a minor, allowing a child easier access to something that's pornographic in nature. So I lean a little bit more towards no on that one. But like you said, if I got a cell phone, I'm 15 years old, and I could just click, yes, I am 18. It is more of like a beacon towards what they want than an actual barrier.
And again, that's probably momentum in a positive direction if the states are actually looking for the welfare of their youngest citizens and most vulnerable citizens. I, again, don't hate that. All right. I've got two left that are saying, look, things aren't perfect. They're good, but we do need to be aware and maybe apply the positive momentum that we've been seeing towards these types of issues, or at least temper our expectations. Let's say, keep your attention span beyond 47 seconds. Good things are coming. The momentum, it's not coming though at the speed of light. It's a freight train, right? It's moving fast, but not subsonic. All right. The first one I have comes from campus reform. This one's a little disturbing economic news. U.S. credit card debt rises to average of more than $10,000 per household.
Yikes.
That's rich, poor alike. $10,000 average debt.
That's
It's
not
actually
good.
it's closer to 11,000, but they had to round it down. And consumers added 21 billion in debt during the third quarter, and nearly half of Americans still have debt from the holidays of last year. They have not paid off the Christmas bills from Christmas 2023.
Oof.
So an incoming new presidential administration is great, and the trends that we're seeing are awesome. Everybody feels really positive, but that's not going to pay your Christmas bills.
No.
Right. So slow down your expectations just a bit.
This is another greater, broader issue towards maybe it's our opulence as a nation that we've been able to enjoy for so long, where we've gotten to this point of such comfort where just charge it. I don't know how people got there. I guess I'll give my parents a little bit of credit here because they weren't great with money, and I think that they would admit that. But somehow they taught us, I think, at least when I think of my brothers, at least my older brother and I don't know about my twin because he's been in prison most of our adult life, but we do pretty well with managing our money. And I think maybe it's a greater issue if you look at the rising debt chart of government spending, it only goes up. And so maybe that kind of rubs off on the American people, and they think, well, what's the big deal? Just charge it. And then they pay the minimum on their credit card. Well, that's not going to do it because you're probably not even paying off your interest at that point. And then jump ahead to the next Christmas and you still haven't paid off last Christmas, and they're just going to charge it up even more. You're going to open up a new credit card if you can. This doesn't end well. And overall, I would say this goes to a personal responsibility issue. You got to pay your bills, and having a limit on your credit card doesn't mean to have that mostly maxed out or almost maxed out or all the way maxed out and just paying the minimum. You got to take some full on responsibility and pay those things down and get them paid off. Part of it maybe too, just my personal experience very early on. My cousin who has done really well for himself. I want to say I was probably around 18, and he told me, yeah, you got to start building your credit score. And he's like, you know what I did? And he's only a few years older than me, maybe about 5 years older. And he said, get a credit card, doesn't matter what the limit is, and use it for all your purchases, but make sure that you're not spending beyond your limit and pay the thing off entirely every month. And I've done that since then. I'm 20 years now. And maybe there was a couple months in there where I wasn't able to pay the whole thing, but by and large, we pay our credit card off every month for all of our expenses. And I think that was a great tip when I was young, especially because of how much credit card companies charge you. But I don't know why obviously many Americans have fallen into this trap of just charge it. That's going to come back to bite you at some point, and overall, that's not going to help the economy. That's not going to help the momentum that we're talking about with an incoming administration who's really, I really do believe that they are wholehearted in wanting to fix so many of these problems that we've seen. It's easy for us to get pigeonholed into FBI and DOJ stuff, but look at the Make America Healthy Again. Look at the SEC. Look at your gas prices and the economy as a whole. Well, this plays a role in that economy part, and I don't know. I'm hopeful that people can start to turn that around too, but it's not a good trend.
Well, you have a good segue into the personal spending, sort of mirroring what the government spending's been, and that'll be the last story we get to. And then I have to. This is not the Dave Ramsey show, so I probably shouldn't go too deep into this. But credit score is just so you can borrow more money. Don't borrow money. Don't have a credit card. Work off of cash. 3, 2, 1. I'm debt free. That's a show for another day, though.
We've been doing a lot of the cash over the last couple of years.
This one was mistaken before about that economic one. This one comes from Campus Reform, and this is my final effort to make the O'Boyle meter go over the top. And it is about government spending, and these are the things that we have been wasting your money on. Some of them are hysterical, but I cry because this is our money. This is what the government has done. And this is about the Doge, 10 outrageous taxpayer-funded higher ed research projects. And this is a laundering scheme. The government gives these grants to universities because their buddies in the universities are training communists for them, or people who used to work in the government and then go to the universities. They're just pillaging the treasury. I just want to read off some of them for you, and you can just cold react. So National Institute of Health, formerly under what's his face, from not Anthony Fauci, but the other one, Francis Collins. All right. Spent just under $600,000 at Emory to explore why chimpanzees throw feces, and another $117,000 to conclude that most chimps are right-handed. National Institute of Health, $5 million.
Steve, are you trying to give me an aneurysm over here?
$5 million to study if finches slurred their songs when they were drunk. National Science Foundation, $1.3 million. How are you doing these last 27 months, Garrett? $1.3 million to make shrimp run on a tiny treadmill.
You gotta be kidding me. Yeah, you'd have been better off giving me that 1.3 million. I'd have bought a couple Bitcoins and then given the government 10% of my profits back.
National Science Foundation, $1 million to a researcher at Cornell, Ivy League, to rank how much it hurt to be stung by a honeybee on different parts of their body. $3.6 million to study where a portion of what were they say? I'm sorry. The $3.6 million at a study at Bowdoin College in Maine, and the portion of the funding went to study the experience on what makes goldfish feel sexy.
Dude. What? Steve.
And on that note, Garrett, what are your final thoughts for the day?
You can't hate your government enough. Doge, okay. As much as I'm a small government guy, Doge can't be big enough to sweep through and get rid of all of this, every single one of those. And I bet you there's a couple hundred more examples out there, maybe smaller numbers and what.
Those were two agencies. It was National Science Foundation and National Institute of Health. Dude. They didn't talk about Homeland Security, right?
Yeah. Dude, there's and that gets me thinking again of the gargantuan beast and trying to actually slow it down. How do you really do it? I love the Doge idea. I think it's great. Give them a scimitar and send them through on horseback and have them slash everywhere. Prices are getting slashed like at Kmart's going out of business sale. But all of those are insane. You would have been, all of us would have been better off if the government just said, let's just look at Warren Buffett's latest investments and put all of this money there. Because what's the total there? Millions and millions of dollars. Just, dude. And all these people who are involved with these things, they don't need a job. Their job should be defunded. Because I don't want somebody in government studying what makes a goldfish feel sexy because it's a freaking goldfish. Or chimpanzees. What Why would I care if they're left-handed or right-handed?
The goldfish thing, just to take this one, how did they determine? Did they interview the goldfish? Right.
Yeah.
That the absurdity of that is we are just not peeing on your leg and telling you it's raining. It's open your mouth or peeing in your mouth and telling you it's Gatorade. We're just gonna send money that you earned to where we want to because we want to hurt you. That's the ultimate message that we've gotten, which is why we have to have this momentum continue to go in and hopefully apply it to these sorts of just god awful aspects of the way the government's grown and wasted and just weaponized itself in any way that it possibly can against us, the people that are supposed to have a social compact with it.
Mhm.
So,
But you
yeah,
don't matter, Steve. Only we matter. The government. That's government throughout history, though. All it does is seek to grow, even in a country like ours, and that's unfortunate. That again, I think, is a matter of the heart. But hey, I don't know. I still am hopeful for the momentum that we do have, and we'll see. It's good. You couldn't have written this story. You wouldn't have believed it. What how this has gone the last couple years, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. My interest is peaked.
all right, I have a musical number as a palate cleanse today, Garrett. It'll probably make your wife happy. I think she likes country music.
She does.
But you have any final ones for us?
I do. We've done this before. Psalm 2. I think last time, and I couldn't tell you the episode number, but I think I went through the first couple verses, which I'll touch on again because I think it still is important to remember. Don't rest on your laurels. We're just getting started. We all gotta be loading charcoal into the locomotive and keep the momentum going. But it says, why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. I think that's what I covered last time I hit on Psalm 2. But I was going through this last night and I really like the end of it as well. And it says, ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now, therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, and that is S-O-N, like Jesus Christ, the Son of God, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. And I bring that up because we still are not perfect. I think the primary example for me is Donald Trump's, maybe it's considered moderate today, his moderate stand on infanticide. That's going to only kindle God's anger. So we're still not perfect, but we certainly are better off than we would have been. I do find myself often wondering, Lord, why did you choose to bless our nation, or at least seemingly bless our nation for this time? Because I think if Kamala would have won, I don't know, man, it would have been very, very, very bad for the First Amendment, for the Bill of Rights as a whole. And so I certainly am cautiously optimistic, but we are still far from a perfect nation. But that's what I got for today.
And I think that we haven't really talked very much about the pardon of Hunter Biden because we're still underneath the thumb of the octogenarian human Roomba, which is today's palate cleanse, because can't do anything about it, guys. Let's just embrace the momentum and know that perhaps we're looking at better times. And even in the dark times, we still have the musical stylings of Remy.
Mr. President, will you be pardoning your son? I won't be pardoning. Okay. You guys ask every day. Just want to make sure. That's never happening. I got it. Full stop, and by the way, I'm gonna pardon my son. I'm gonna tell everyone to lighten up. Sir, if a private citizen did this, I'm aware that there's thousands in jail for the same, but TBH, they're all lame and not my son. I'm gonna pardon my son.
So at least we have that going for us, Garrett. We can laugh so we just don't cry.
I love it.
All right. Guys, thank you very much for joining us today on the American Radicals podcast. We'll be back with you Thursday, 10:30, same place, rumble.com/amradpod. Smash the thumbs up if you haven't already. Follow the channel. Until then, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.